Welcome back to the ROKK Rundown. This week, coming up, not this week, next Tuesday is State of the Union. And it ends up being a week and a day where we spend a lot of time counseling clients about how to position themselves and what they should do. So my thought first was, let's talk a little bit about what you expect to hear, and then a little bit about how you're coaching folks about how to position themselves. So what do you expect to hear next Tuesday, Rodell?
I expect to hear that America is great again. I think it'll be light on policy specifics. I think it'll be heavy on the things that he has done. So heavy on immigration, heavy on law enforcement. I think heavy on trying to convince not only the folks in the room, but the American people that the economy is doing better than most people think that it actually is. I think that there'll also be, unfortunately, a little bit more partisanship than, well, I guess we're getting used to it over these last however many years, but I think that there'll be some swipes. I'm sure he'll take some swipes of folks that are actually in the audience. I think that there'll be theatrics from both the Republicans and the Democrats to kind of show their disapproval. And it'll be interesting to see who some of the guests are. That is always interesting to see how people are signaling, message signaling with the guests that they bring.
You remember from leadership how much activity happens inside the Capitol. I'm curious what you're thinking and what you're expecting for next week.
Yeah, this one, the State of the Union has now become much less important than it used to be. It has become just another speech given by a president where a decade ago it was really momentous, maybe even longer than that. It felt like a momentous occasion, ceremonial, a long build up to it. Now it just feels like a Tuesday, and then what happens what's going to take us on our journey on Wednesday morning, as opposed to reflecting on the State of the Union for the next few days, and then the page turns. The page turns instantly. However, I do think that there are some differences this time. One is, of course, he's going to be talking about domestic issues. He's going to be talking about his accomplishments on immigration, important on the economy. He's got to talk about affordability as much as he can. But looming in the background, while we're all working day to day, there is a second aircraft carrier strike group moving into position off of Iran. He's calling the Secretary General this week. He is going to do something and say something at Iran that is momentous, I think. That's a wind-up as a platform for something else. I don't know. But that's a big thing that we're all kind of doing our deal, and we're like, oh yeah, that's kind of what happened with Venezuela. A second carrier strike group, and he has the most resources, the most aircraft in the region since 2003. It's significant. And we are distracted by everything that's going on. But that is happening out there, and that could really impact events back home in a major way.
That's a really, really good point. And I had heard some of that. But I think that that's definitely something to watch for. And the Capitol, too, members on both sides of the aisle are taking some action and already sort of positioning themselves as to whether or not the president can do that without the Congress's say. There's another note, though, that we flagged in the Axios communicators this morning that's kind of an interesting take about how affordability, to your point, has become also a keystone of conversation and advertising and messaging from corporate America. And that they're talking about how they are making goods and services more affordable, and it's actually working in terms of consumer sentiment. So I'm curious about how, as that becomes something that we start to watch and pay attention to, how are you counseling clients in the shadow of the State of the Union about their own messaging? What kinds of things do you think work?
Well, I think for any corporation that is doing that, you better be making your goods more affordable, right? And not just by a little. Listen, I think having conversations, and you saw a little bit of it even in the Super Bowl, of just kind of like, let's not ignore, let's break the fourth wall. This is what's going on. This is what people really care about. And then going right at that issue, I think is very smart advertising, because you're communicating to the consumer that we don't think that you're stupid. we know what's going on here. You know, we're not gonna advertise in rose-colored glasses because you're certainly not wearing them. And so having those conversations, because affordability is extremely important to middle-class families throughout this country. So I approve of the method, but I go back to, you know, if you're lowering your product, whatever it is, by a couple of pennies here and there, then I think that there's an authenticity. I mean, you really need to, if you're going to do it, then you need to show people that you're actually making your products cheaper in a way that is going to affect their bottom line.
Smart. What do you think, Ron?
Yeah, the president's going to likely call out in the State of the Union several industries, notably healthcare. You know, he's been starting to jawbone on health insurance companies. So I think we're likely going to hear about that. We're going to hear about, you know, the cost of, while the cost of living is coming down, there are some areas that he needs help with. You know, he may talk about electricity. I'm not sure. You know, he's been touting.
That wouldn't surprise me.
He's been touting about how he was able to get Microsoft to fund its own electricity, pay for its own electricity, basically. But I see him going after a few industries, and anything that relates to kitchen table issues, you know, American families' pocketbooks. He has been very successful at talking about those things and making it look like he's doing something and trying to get, you know, prescription drug companies into the Oval Office to cut deals. Whether or not it really lowers prices across the board is a totally different story. And the economy will be the number one issue in the election today, usually is. And do people feel, and are they seeing in reality prices coming down? And you know, he has some solid data to point to. Inflation is down. Jobs are still being created. Are people feeling that? And will they feel the tax cuts in the One Big Beautiful Bill? Will they feel those benefits by that time? And I would assume he's going to talk about distributing checks to American taxpayers, you know, rebate checks, so to speak. But anyway, just a few things.
You make a great point.
I just
Hold one
sure,
thought
please.
for 1 second, because what you're talking about is the president will talk about pocketbook issues that are the issues that undoubtedly drive people to the polls, drive them to the voting booth, while potentially there will be something that will happen overseas that will also occur that people don't necessarily politically move for. It'll be interesting to see if that's actually the setup and how that looks. So very interesting. Sorry to cut you off.
Oh, no, it's fine. I was just going to say, to Ron's point, I think President Trump has the same problem that President Biden had, that President Obama had, especially in that first term. It is hard, and there's always been a kind of divide between politicians, consultants on this. Whether or not you jawbone the economy and you make voters just submit to your vision of where the economy is good, the economy's good, the economy's good, even if, regardless of the indicators, people don't believe it, or you roll with where people are. That you can't tell people that, listen, if people don't think that the economy's good, even though you've got all these data points, you know, and I mean, Biden went through this too. He's like, no, actually, here's some great things about the economy. American people didn't buy it, right? So I think that President Trump, it's interesting that this is not it's not a partisan thing. I think every president at some point in time has been faced with this. I want to talk about how great the economy is. I want to talk about how great things are going in this country, and has run smack dab into the skepticism of the American people. So it'll be interesting to see how he navigates that on Tuesday.
Well, I guess we'll have to wait and see. That's it for the ROKK Rundown. We'll see you next time.